it's never a fixed idea. It's never a template. It is always a seasonally responsive, wine to fit within a broad idea of what
Yes.
the Caley should be. Tell us a little bit about the 16 and where that sits, and are we starting to see, have we got the statistical data now, with 5 vintages under the belt to really say that there is a Caley style that we understand?
Yeah, I think the style starts probably in 14, in the evidence of Coonawarra fruit really shining. I think in 12 and 13 they were great wines, absolutely great wines, but probably not wines that you'd pick up and smell and go, well, that's a Coonawarra driven wine.
Yeah.
Whereas 14, absolutely. 15 and 16, right in the core of the aromatics, you can smell the Coonawarra fruit. And I think that is really a driver for this wine because it's a Coonawarra Cabernet. That's what the label says. Yeah. So if that's your driver, then you really have to pay respect to that and have that aromatic. And so whilst, as I said, the 14 drove it, I think 15 was a riper year and it gave us a little bit more mid-palate weight and depth.
Yeah.
So if anything, palate-wise, that one probably sits a little bit outside the stylistic drive, but I think we really hone in on the 16 with a pristine balance of fruit. There's sweetness of fruit, which illustrates and reflects the 2016 being a little bit riper than a couple of the early vintages, but certainly not a ripe year, but it's just beautiful fruit drive, but a little bit more sweetness in the palate. And I've said this a lot in recent times that we've been tasting and starting to showcase this wine, is that it, to me, reflects 2012 as a wine, more so than the others, and 12 has been some people's benchmark. But I think the aromatics and the structure of the wine are very similar to 12, and the vintages, 12 and 16, are actually quite similar in their growing conditions. What we do have in 16, as I said, is that lovely little bit of sweetness in the mid-palate, which is quite intriguing and almost a little bit exotic in the way it sort of flows through the mouth, whereas the 12 was all about the pristine, seamless structure and flow. There's just another element with the 16 coming.
We should probably have a look at this 16 just to see, if this wine does.
I'm more than happy, Nick.
Live up to the solid foundations already laid for it. Cheers.
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 But immediately you see that that bright sort of clarity of fruit there, but the wine isn't shouting at you. The wine is just sitting there quite.
It's poised.
Quite, just comfortable in the glass, and I think it's when you see it so often that people, when they try to make a statement wine, it's throw everything at it, turn it up to 11, and expect the wine to smack you between the eyes. But that's never been.
It's never been.
Caley,
it's never been Caley, and it's evolving for most of Yalumba reds anyway. Is that none of our wines are that style. It's because I firmly believe that the wine should become more refined as the wines gain their icon status. And I think that you can offer a lot more with complexity and refinement than you can with just bang for your buck, as it were. And Caley's all about fruit and palate drive, and it's not about lots of oak, it's not about alcohol weight, it's not about hitting you in the face with power. This is about being sublime and pristine and a direction. Very happy with it. I think, as I said earlier, I think it really reflects, with respect, back on the 12, which was the first release in its overall style, but I do think there's a little bit more textured delivery in the mid-palate, but it's still got that flow.
Its Coonawarra-ness, which is an awkward word to say, but its Coonawarra-ness is really evident. That fine sort of cassis and almost sort of blackberry leaf sort of character to it, but then that does just have a little bit more draping of that Barossa and Eden Valley.
I think it evens out the palate, but it still doesn't take away from the length and the flow.
No.
The little bit of Barossa Shiraz, which is 29%, 71% Coonawarra Cabernet,
Yep.
and 29% Barossa Shiraz, of which I think the Eden Valley component was about 3%, 6%, 3%, pretty low. So it's perhaps starting to have an influence with a little bit of extra fruit, maybe a spicier fruit through the mid palate.
Yeah, but none of it obscures, that Coonawarra Cabernet framework that the wine is built on, and I think that's such a crucial part of it. I think when these wines are going to be Cabernet driven, you do want to see a bit of that internal architecture, and sometimes when Shiraz is blended with Cabernet, it can swamp a bit of that structure.
And that's one of the arts of blending, I think, this wine, is that we really try and that's why early on we were using different Shiraz vineyards, because we're looking for the right Shiraz to fit within the Coonawarra shape. And you're right, if you have too much Shiraz in the wrong years, or if it's a Shiraz driven, perhaps the mid palate can be a little bit too voluptuous and rounder, and then that takes away the essence of what the Coonawarra drive should be all about. So I guess that's the art of, and when we do look at the different percentage blends over the 5 vintages, they're different, but they are reflective of what the vintage supplies us.
Yeah. Look, and I think it's absolutely worked in this one. It's a very complete, harmonious, wine that nothing seems out of place, and it just has this really assured momentum across the palate, and these beautifully fine, persistent, sort of dusty tannins. It's a beautiful one.
Thank you, and I'm happy to hear that.
So here's to the 2016 Caley.
Cheers.
Thank you, Jez.
Thanks,
Kevin. And
Thank you, Jess.
thank you, Fred Caley-Smith.
Cheers.
Fred.